Now that Daryl Morey and the front office have landed the big fish when talking about Paul George, got to fill out the rest of the roster. Not just Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, and bringing back Kelly Oubre, but some other names to fill out the rest of the roster to complete it, to make sure that this team is good enough to compete for an NBA championship. We talk about that today here on the PHLY Sixers Free Agency Frenzy, presented by our great friends from Rothman Orthopedics. Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, I'm Devon Givens. Brianna producing the show as always, and all of you in the chat. We can't wait to hear the names that you have up your sleeve.
I'm sure there are plenty of them.
That final roster spot, final starting spot, and some of the other people that you want in the rotation.
I was going to say, if it was final roster spot, I slept through a lot last night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But we have a lot to get into. We will discuss all of those. We'll talk about a familiar name that a lot of people are throwing out there. We mentioned him a little bit yesterday, but we'll get to him a little bit later and why that may or may not make sense. But we'll get into it, dive all into it today here on our PHLY Sixers podcast. What's up, Jay? We see you in there. What's going on, Spirit 42? And Aaron says it's a frenzy. The frenzy has slowed down, though, Kyle. Not a lot of frenzy anymore. And you know what's funny? It really wasn't much of a frenzy this year. Of course, with it starting early, like we typically do, get it right away, 6:01.
Well, it definitely wasn't a frenzy. I was sitting up till almost 4 in the morning waiting for this damn meeting to take place.
Even when all the names start to come out, it's not back to back to back to back to back like we're accustomed to. But here we are, as somebody did.
What time did you finally check out there Monday morning? Because Devon's not quite as, like, he's not on Twitter tweeting. He's not usually on our Discord.
I'm just up.
He should be. And we're going to bully him into coming back onto our Discord.
Correct.
You can't always tell when Devon is up because he's not necessarily communicating as often as Kyle and I are. So how long did you make it?
I made it until 3:15 and then I woke up again.
He stayed up until 3:15 and he still missed it.
I missed it.
Unbelievable.
But I woke back up at 3:45. It just happened. I just knew to wake up, man. And I woke up and I saw you guys going back and forth. And I said, it must have happened. And there we are. But with that one, maybe we don't get that one overnight. Maybe we get something else during the day where we see another name drop that's part of the roster that we say, all right. Or even Paul Reed being waived or traded to help complete this roster construction. But as we look here now, and we've talked about maybe adding a possible 2-guard if it's not going to be Kelly Oubre in that spot, or adding a 4-man if we're just going positionally, or looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 overall. Where right now, Derek, when you look at this basketball team and we start to go through some names, do you have any favorites? I'll throw it to Kyle, of course, ask for his favorites. I'll give maybe a favorite for myself. Do you have any favorites right now of knowing what they have remaining? What is it, about 9.2, close to 10 million that they
somewhere
have?
In that range. It depends on a couple of factors, but somewhere in the 9 to 10 range.
So how they start to divvy up the money. Do you have a favorite of looking at completing this starting lineup, and what are you looking at in positionally with that player?
My favorite is KJ Martin.
Please explain.
So this is not as a starter, but this is my favorite to sign. So I wrote about this recently on allphly.com. But basically, signing him, so you have KJ's bird rights, which means you can theoretically sign him to a contract up to the NBA's maximum, which would be the same one Tyrese Maxey got, right around $35 million. Obviously, nobody thinks KJ Martin is worth $35 million. I don't think KJ Martin probably believes he is worth $35 million.
He's a confident guy.
He's confident. All right, let's put it this way. I don't think he believes he is worth 25% of the salary cap. He might still. That doesn't matter. But because you have his full bird rights and because he only has a $2 million cap hold, which is the same as a minimum contract, you can keep his bird rights without it getting in the way of your other moves. Other players, like Buddy Hield, who has like a $28 million cap hold, like Robert Covington, who has like a $17 million cap hold or something in that range, just off the top of my head, I apologize if it's wrong, but they have significant cap holds that you have to release in order to get the cap space necessary to sign Paul George. KJ Martin doesn't get in the way of that because you can go up to the maximum. With his contract, he becomes a sneaky way to have either like a sign-in trade now, where you can take back more salary, or you can send him out without taking back more salary in a trade, so it won't hard cap you. He becomes a way to make one more big addition. There's some things that are will be tough to overcome with that. I can get in that real quickly. The other thing is to sign him to
who wants to listen to Derek talk about base year compensation? And
base year compensation can get
exciting.
If you think I talked about some dorky shit before, wait until we get into a base year compensation kind of conversation. But there are some complications that would come to that. But it would be a way to get, like I said, a significant trade back without hard capping yourself. The other way, though, to avoid hard capping and also to avoid base year compensation is to give him a 1+1 contract, 1 year guaranteed, next year not. Basically keep him around until the trade deadline at an inflated number that makes no sense, no basketball sense, but would be useful as a salary matcher at the deadline. And basically keep yourself flexible for the next trade cycle. And I know a lot of people don't want to, kick the can down the road on a move, but I think when we start going through some of the names here, there aren't a lot of great forwards who you would look at and say, this completes a title team. Daryl Morey has frequently stated, I don't need to build the best team for October. I need to build the best team for the playoffs. If you believe the trade market is going to be better in February than it is now, if you believe that KJ Martin not being a base year compensation is going to make you more flexible in February than it is now, you might want to bring him back at an inflated salary. Maybe you can then use the cap space you'll get with Paul Reed as your final move, KJ as a move to be made later. I think that is one place that I'm looking right now.
Well, so as you bring up the potential, Derek, for either whether it's a sign and trade, future trade, whatever it might end up being, I don't know, you might want to hit the ding a couple times on there. There was
not that close, buddy. You're good. You're good.
No, he said a couple of times.
Oh,
there you go. Mike Scotto over at Hoops Hype has reported today that there is, and this is his language, I want to stress that, the Sixers have, quote, exploratory interest in trading for Nets forward Dorian Finney-Smith. League sources told Hoops Hype, but nothing is considered imminent there. We've brought Dorian Finney-Smith up on this show
a ton.
I feel like every show up to this point, and he is at, Derek, the very high end of, if they do all the maneuvering possible to fit him, there would be very little maneuverability. I believe you said, Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, that if they were to trade for him specifically, or that type of number specifically, that their other minimum guys would have to be younger players.
Yeah, like rookie minimums.
Smaller minimum contracts. So that's something to keep in mind.
So real quick on that. When you sign a veteran to a minimum contract, your cap hit is equal to that of a 2-year veteran. They do that basically so like a 10-year veteran doesn't cost more on your cap than a 2-year veteran, so that veterans aren't being run out of the league, basically. They want to make sure that people who have been in the league continue to have a chance and aren't losing spots basically for cap reasons. So all minimum contracts above 2 years get basically prorated down to a 2-year minimum, but a rookie, a 0-year minimum in this case, would cost, I think, about $1 million less per year. So that is one way to get under that apron.
Yes. So Dorian Finney-Smith, if somehow he's not a free agent, so he's not technically in this list that we're running through today, but he does check some of the boxes that I think are left to be filled for this team. I think he's not like a 1 through 4 defender, but certainly like a 3-4 switchy type defender, good athlete, guy who's played in a bunch of playoff games at this point. How many playoff games has he actually appeared in at this point? About 35. He said 4 runs through the playoffs, including 1 long one in Dallas. So has some playoff experience. The shot is his big swing skill. That has come and gone. There was a point last year where we heard the Nets were asking for the sun and the moon for him. I think he was shooting like 40%. Yeah. And that came down to earth. He ended up shooting under 35%, 34.8 on 4.9 a game. So the volume was good. He's a comfortable shooter, right? He hovers around that 5 attempts per game mark over the last 3-4 years or so. That's to the good. He's a decent rebounder, although wish he was a slightly better rebounder. Obviously, he's not a Josh Hart, certainly. Not much of a playmaker. He can make, the standstill swing passes, but you're not going to ask him to attack off the dribble and be that kind of passer, as Derek apparently is dying slowly over there.
Continually dying.
I would like him. I'm not sure that it's worth putting yourself in like complete lockdown for the other salaries you have to get. But that's certainly a good example of a player that if they do a sign and trade with KJ or a Paul Reed type deal, that maybe that's, is that the top of what they can get as far as
there's might be like $300K more they could theoretically go, but yeah, it's right at the top.
Yeah, so I like him. Don't love him. Think he'd be a good addition. Nobody's gonna be throwing start the parade talk over Dorian Finney-Smith. I'd say that.
Haven't watched him a lot over the last year and a half specifically. I watched him in Dallas just like everyone else did. But looking at him and what he was doing with the Brooklyn Nets, you guys like to talk about the connective piece. He is one of those. He may not be as good of a passer as Nick Batum, but he is a connective piece. He understands his role. He doesn't get frustrated if the ball doesn't find him. He played with Cam Thomas. So just imagine what we were watching. So
there's no Cam Thomas on this team.
There's no Cam Thomas on this team. There's some unselfish players. There were some unselfish players there, but it was a black hole once it got to number 24. That being said, the shooting. Watched a lot of games where they would leave him alone on purpose. Now, he can knock down a shot. It looks good. He's been around the league long enough where the shot doesn't look bad. Just doesn't necessarily fall as much as you would like percentage-wise. And on this basketball team, playing with the now 3 cornerstones of your squad, he's going to get some pretty good looks again in this role. Now, playing on that Brooklyn team, not so much because of the attention. Maybe Kale would get 2 people on him, but everyone else was single covered. So when the ball did find him, he would have some open shots. Yes, they would leave him open for those reasons, especially if he missed his first 2 or 3. And they generally do that with anyone else anyway. But when talking about the player overall, he does all the dirty work things that you want. He will attack the glass. He will, of course, be that connective guy. And he will defend anybody that you ask him to defend on the other side. You may not love him 1 through 5, but he is certainly one that's going to give the effort to defending those players should he get switched on. So he is that. He can still run the floor, things of that nature, set some really good screens at a decent size. He's not a bad piece. So it's just about how are you getting him in that trade? What do you have to do? And are you worried about any tax implications when it comes to Dorian Finney-Smith? So I do like that name overall when it comes to him. He's played in a lot of games in the playoffs, 34. That's a decent amount that we're talking about. And if you're looking at the 76ers in this case, they want to make a deep run, and you want some people who've already been there and already done that as well. One of the guys for me that I wanted to focus on is also a veteran guy, and he played for the Miami Heat. And while making a name for himself in the postseason, he didn't do it this time around. They didn't make it. They were in the play-in. But he did it the year before, and he had people going crazy about what he was doing.
Where you're going.
And you know where I'm going. I'm going with Caleb Martin, who played 64 games last season. He did start 23. 10 points a game last season, 4 boards in his 27 minutes that he played. Shooting from the long distance, he shot 35% from beyond on 3.6 attempts a night. Miami seems like they make the playoffs every year, and he certainly made a name for himself 2 playoff runs ago. They've been to the finals. He's been a part of that team. And when we're talking about a player now coming in to just simply add to that starting role with some experience, a guy who is not afraid to take the shot. You want him to make it, but he's not afraid to take it. Even at 35%, that's below league average. But he has been there, and we've seen it enough where he's done quality things in big games. He's played in big games. He's not spooked by those big games. And I feel like Caleb, with him still being available, he's probably not getting the number that he felt like he was going to get. So you might be able to get him at a contract that is more favorable and works for you to slide him right in. It may not have to be a long-term deal because he's probably going to want to get right back out there and secure and lock down another contract that's more to his liking with a longer-term deal there. And at his age right now of his birthday
like
is not until
29.
Yeah, he's 29 in September. I'm okay with that. 29 in September, and you put him on a 1+1 where if it goes well for him, he might feel like he opts out. Sixers get to the finals. He might get that money that he wants because they just went on a really good run. He was a big part of that. So when I look at Caleb Martin, 10 points, 4 boards. 10 points, 4 boards is really probably all you're looking forward to in terms of the point production from that one of those other fifth starters. You want those other intangibles to work out, as we've talked about, the rebounding, looking at that, knocking down the three-pointers when the ball swings to you when you're wide open. He's going to get a lot of good looks. We've seen that he can knock those down. He's played in a lot of playoff games, and I think he would be a decent piece at a decent price if the number is not there for him, understanding now what this team is after already having Embiid and Maxey, now adding Paul George to the mix.
Forget the whole hard cap thing. If it was without the hard cap, would you have a preference of Finney-Smith or Caleb?
I would probably take Finney-Smith, although given that Caleb played really well in a losing effort, obviously, but shot the ball really well again in the first round this year. So he now has a couple years in a row of
he only shoots in May and June.
Rising to the occasion. And you don't want to overread into that, right? Because this year it was, 5 games that they played? The finals run much bigger sample, 20-something games that they played.
Even still, like people can go out for 20-something games.
Yes. So I still probably lean Finney-Smith. I like the defensive versatility there. I do think it's a fair question, though. They're in the same general category of player, I would say. But I think I believe in Finney-Smith's switchability more, and I think you might be able to get away with more if in the event that you wanted to eventually play small in the playoffs. I think you could use Finney-Smith in more of those the up the front court matchups than you could Caleb Martin, who I think is a bit smaller, or at least a bit not as burly as Finney-Smith is.
I think that's probably right. Finney-Smith has had more instances where he has shot the ball well. Hasn't really happened since he left Dallas, but there were a couple years where he was shooting the ball real well. Mm-hmm. Caleb Martin, outside of that 1 year and then the one playoff run, has been a pretty middling shooter. Willing, but middling. I probably just trust Finney-Smith's shot a little more, and I think you're right about the versatility. The problem is that hard cap, if you do trade Reed for him, that hard cap is a real problem. It's a real problem.
But that's why you eliminate it and just simply ask player to player who would be a better fit. And in this one, I would agree with you guys because Finney-Smith, now that we bring it back into it, while we were asking the question in the beginning, I went with Caleb Martin because he's free. But Finney-Smith, 6'7", again, has shot the ball well enough in the past, will continue to shoot it. He's not afraid, even if he misses, to continue to do so. And that defensively, when we're talking about now having maybe Kelly Oubre with Paul George and now Finney-Smith sandwiched in between Maxey and Joel Embiid, I like the size factor there. Looks like a more traditional, even though it's a smaller lineup where we're not looking at a 6'9", 6'10" power forward. He's still 6'7", but he makes up for so much because of how tough he is, the physicality, and doing all those things. And then the switchability is just really important in today's game because of how people like to attack or how you like to run your defense to slide off of one and into another. So I would prefer Finney-Smith in this case. But if we're just simply looking at getting a free guy,
it's
look
like
Caleb Martin.
The conversations we've had, Devon, with the free agents or the guys that they might trade for at the star end, right? Like, did we maybe lean Jimmy Butler over Paul George for some playoff performance concerns or playoff durability of their game concerns? Yes, but Jimmy Butler, if he had actually been really available, would have cost multiple first-round picks, and there are concerns there. And so Finney-Smith, I don't think is going to cost a ton in terms of the trade, the outgoing piece of the trade, but it does box you in a lot more as it relates to contracts.
Minor news, that wasn't a heavy bell.
No, it's a small bell. We'll get to that real quickly here. I think first, you want to wrap that up?
No, you just belled me for somebody retiring that hasn't played in the NBA in years. What the hell are you doing over there?
I'm just excited about the bell.
No, you're not allowed to use the bell anymore.
I didn't have the bell at all.
Your bell privileges are revoked. Kemba Walker retired. That's what Derek's ringing the bell over.
Look, I missed out on it. It looked like so much fun when you guys were ringing it. I didn't get a chance. All right?
That's true. We did keep it away from you for all those big names that were dropping.
All right. Well, since I completely interrupted Kyle and he doesn't even remember what he was talking about.
No, you're fine.
We want to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. First up, we want to tell you about Indeed. We're driven by the search for better. If I keep doing this, they're going to be looking for better for me. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Oh, I'm going to screw that up. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work with Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to your job's more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Pretty good talent to my left and right, as Derek says that. And, of course, behind the camera, as Bree is here as always. But I do want to tell you that this show is also brought to you by our good friends from BetParx Sportsbook. We've brought to you by the BetParx app. Get in the zone with BetParx Sportsbook app. Money is in the moments, and some money. You might want to play some tonight when the Philadelphia baseball team is in Chicago to take on that squad for an 8 o'clock game. Remember when they used to have all the day games and we didn't have to worry about the lights there in Wrigley? Well, they're there tonight for a series against Chicago. So if you're feeling good about the team, that's still pretty darn good as we head into the All-Star break, getting ready for the All-Star break. The money is in the moments there, Philadelphia over Chicago. Win big with all-day action. Win your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Download the app like I have. Play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, welcome back as we are here with you and discussing what's next for the Philadelphia 76ers. Dorian Finney-Smith.
Might have like a light bell ring here coming out of the...
Well, I would, but you MFers took it from me. So
that's why. Because this is actually relevant to the Sixers. We have a tweet and delete situation from Paul Reed. Yes, it was a very quick... Within the last 5 minutes, I sent the image to producer Bree, I believe. So I'm not sure if she can get it up on the screen. But Paul Reed briefly shared via Twitter, "God work in mysterious ways," and then
got rid of it
down. So there you go. Look at that, producer Bree, getting it up there. We've heard. B-Ball Paul has spoken. So that. I'll ask around, obviously, but I would read at least a little bit into that because I'm sure at minimum he's heard his name tossed around a little bit as a potential casualty. I'm sure he saw the Drummond signing, the second-round pick usage on Bona, but I'll just say it's interesting timing.
And I'm sure his agents have already told him, of course, what could happen with Paul Reed in this particular case. Yeah, what could happen with him. Interesting. Yeah. All right. And that also, as we talk about Martin, KJ Martin, Caleb Martin, and Dorian Finney-Smith, you also, in Mike Scotto's piece, he mentioned a name that we never talk about, and he talked about some guards that they may still want to go after, some ball handling, some guard depth in general. Right now on the roster, when we look at the guards, it is Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and Eric Gordon. When we look at actual guards, and we can also slide Kelly Oubre into that conversation, but we probably look at him and Ricky Council, as you said before the show, as more of two wing players. in that category. So going after some others, he mentioned the name in Lester Quinones that played with the Golden State Warriors, 23, 24 years of age, only averaged 4 points coming out of Memphis in college, but not a name that we've talked about because he never really crossed our minds of someone worthy of. But if it's out there, at least maybe an agent putting it out there along those lines. And not a name that we've, again, discussed much as a guy to have off the bench and maybe develop a little bit.
Well, so I would say this. If Finney-Smith is a real possibility, and it's too early to know right now, he would fit in that young minimum guy category, right? Like he's only 23 or 24. Yep, he's only got 2 years of experience. So his minimum salary would be quite low. I can't tell you that I have a great feel for what his game is at this point because he played 10 minutes a game in 37 games last year for Golden State. They are also a bit of a train wreck right now, or were last year because of, the internal politics with Clay and, his descent as a player and trying to lean on him, elevating some of these other young guys, trying to figure out, where does Moses Moody fit into this future of the franchise? How much do we want to lean on Jonathan Kuminga? So, very hard to say what he is at this point. I would think that's someone you keep in touch with if they go this trade Paul Reed route or do some kind of KJ Martin sign and trade where you're boxing yourselves in salary-wise and you're looking at, okay, this guy's a 6'5", 23, 24-year-old, and we just hope he can shoot. It's pretty simple, I think.
Yeah. Saw him in college a little bit.
He could definitely shoot in college.
Yeah. And that was the thing. Saw him in college a little bit, and I said, okay, I understand what Golden State is doing here, but it just didn't really translate into the NBA. Not to say that it won't in another destination. We've seen plenty of players do that, where they leave one spot and thrive in another. But it was an interesting name that we haven't talked about and haven't discussed a lot. One of the names that I wanted to throw at you guys, because Chris Dunn, your player that you were looking at, he signed with the Clippers yesterday, and now they're looking at some other different ways to get him there, possibly trade with the Utah Jazz, sign and trade. But they still need a little more backcourt depth, Derek, and we talk about all these other names. You need somebody who can handle the basketball. Too many times last year where we discussed no one can handle the basketball when it's out of Tyrese Maxey's hands. And with Eric Gordon, sure, and Jared McCain, one of the things that was a little bit of a knock for the evaluation from you guys was he doesn't dribble doesn't handle it well enough for your liking. They need others who can dribble the basketball. And one of the guys that I looked at as a backup point guard potentially was Dennis Smith Jr. because I've always liked him. It hasn't worked out in his career, but he's made
He's found himself a little bit
different
last
role
year or two.
That wasn't his role coming out of NC State, which is now a defensive guy that can handle the ball, still has some athleticism that we talked about. And watching him, the shooting, which was a problem before, he's still not great at it. We're not looking at and saying he's Tyrese Maxey, but he is a guy who can shoot the ball decently enough when the ball swings to him in an open shot. So Dennis Smith Jr. for me is still somebody that I feel like they may be able to get on one of those lower level contracts. I would be happy with the signing, Derek, if it was someone like Dennis. If it was Dennis Smith Jr., I'm not going to say someone, it's him in particular.
And that's somebody who you played in Brooklyn, so you would have strong opinions on him if he wasn't a good team player. So
I already pointed out number 24.
Yeah, he has sort of carved out a little bit of a career, and he had so much athleticism when he came in the league. He was such a he was a theoretically dynamic pick and roll player because how quickly he could turn that corner. He has improved defensively. The jump shot's a pretty significant concern.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that he takes pretty good care of the ball.
Yeah.
For an attacking guard like that, that's pretty key. Yeah, they need more as a backup point guard. What are we talking about here? Are we talking cap space? Are we talking I have no idea if there's any kind of a market for him. I can't imagine.
I would still think it's somewhere in that minimum. So
as a minimum, I'm not against another. I do worry a little bit. There's just a lot of. It definitely violates Kyle's no shorter than me rule.
I'm saying if I'm trying to use minimum salary on a backup point guard for defensive reasons, we're riding the Markelle Fultz bus again. we'll get to all the wish casting on Ben Simmons from some online people in a bit, but Fultz is just because Fultz is bigger and Fultz's versatility defensively would be.
I still think Fultz is going to cost a little more though.
Yes, but
I would agree with that.
I'm not pushing chips in for any of these guys, for these type of guys. I'm not spending money on anybody but wings and forwards at this point.
No, I mostly agree with you on that.
I still think they need another.
I would like one for sure.
I agree, but I think when push comes to shove,
real money, I agree with you. If we're still looking at a minimum contract, and he's like, all right, I got to do it again. Then he does it again. I'm with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They need more ball handling. It's just not something at this stage that I am committing significant resources to. If it's a guy who is shorter than I am, they need to build a team that doesn't force Joel Embiid to be superhero on defense on every play. Now he's going to be a really important player, important piece on defense all the time. But part of, for example, in Minnesota, part of the reason that Rudy Gobert had such a great season is he didn't have to be the only guy every night as a high-level defender. Anthony Edwards had great defensive moments. McDaniels was, he's an all-defense level defender out there. They had Slow-Mo was a useful defender, although his offense was a complete train wreck in the playoffs, and that's why I'm completely out on him as a potential Sixers target while we're on that subject. So they are in an interesting place where they got the important guy. They've gotten some good depth. Drummond will be good. Gordon as a minimum guy is fine.
Love Oubre.
I love the fit based on getting Paul George. But they need athleticism, they need rebounding, and they need those guys to shoot too. And with the amount of money they have left, you're not always going to get all of those. In fact, I think you'll be lucky if you can get one of those from the remaining guys you bring in.
And see, when you talk about that defensive effort that happened in Minnesota, of course you have Anthony Edwards, who's typical shooting guard size, 6'4", 6'5", of course with McDaniels there. Mike Conley, still a good defender, a good enough defender even at his age. But what I'm looking at when you talk about a Nick Nurse defense and what we discussed when he was hired is how, and I remember talking to Alvin Williams about this because of him being there and seeing it all. And he was like, when they first had James Harden still on the roster, one of his concerns was how they like to run the defense, not just half court, but when you extend it 75 feet away from the basket on an inbound and picking up a man. Not liking that idea of who's that going to be because Maxey didn't have that profile yet where he can do that a little bit. Kelly Oubre wasn't on the team as of yet when that happened. But now that we've seen Oubre do that in the postseason effectively, and Tyrese Maxey effectively enough, and even Kyle Lowry still, even at his age, doing the same thing. When I watch Dennis Smith Jr., now that is his thing, he hounds these people coming up the floor. So to your point, you're absolutely right with the shooting and all of that. But I'm also looking at, I've seen him pluck people in the games where it's going the other way right away because he's created the offense for them, not only for himself, but also for his teammates, whether it's in the backcourt, whether it's half court, right? Or they cross half court. He is, a lot of people are using this word, and I don't really like it all that much on Twitter because I think it's now overused, a demon. He is a demon on the defensive end now where he has accepted that role where we talk about players being the last to know who they are. He knows who he is now. He's still trying to get himself out of that, and that's what the play that I think he's doing defensively and doing that. And we also look at the shooting. I do wonder because of where he would be playing in this particular setting, if the shooting with the amount of volume that he takes from beyond the three-point line, we always talk about playing off the big fella. If he's out there sometimes with him, you get better shots when that guy is getting that attention. Maxey is getting better shots if for whatever reason he's out there with him from time to time. But I just look at he and Oubre with Embiid on the back end for whatever lineup it is. I'm not saying it's a closing lineup. I'm just saying a lineup where he is causing
you're going to have a lot of combinations between the starting and closing minutes.
Of giving that ball handler fits on that end where he is creating and helping. I think it's more of him helping and create the offense than he is a detriment to the offense on the other end when it comes to his 10, 12 minutes that he's out there on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I was going, making the case for him as Boots. Boots, come on, man. Says Dennis Smith Jr., really? Come on. We're talking about backup point guards here. You're
I'm
not
talking
going to
about
go
like
out there.
minimum contracts too.
We're
Like,
talking about minimum contract. Yeah, so
I have some guys that are going to get more than the minimum. We'll talk about after we talk about some friends here.
We'll definitely do that. So as we hang out with you here today, and we're like, oh, a little panic here. What's going on with Paul Reed? Well, Paul Reed is a healthy guy right now playing, trying to figure out his NBA future and what's going on. So he doesn't have to worry about this, but I know I did with our great friends from Rothman Orthopedics. Everyone has a specialty they love. For some, it's running or gardening. For others, it's shooting.
We missed a ding, by the way. I'll ding you out of the break.
At Rothman Orthopedics, their physicians are not only specialized in orthopedics and clinical research, but they are fellowship trained to treat specific areas of the body. Since 1970, their physicians have remained committed to research, innovation, and minimally invasive procedures to get you back to what you specialize in. Like for me on the basketball court is weekend warrior. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians subspecialize in specific areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services, including hip, knee, spine, shoulder, and elbow, foot, and ankle. I've dealt with a few of those. Rothman, year over year, consistently perform among the highest volume of knee, hip, shoulder, and ankle replacements in the country, over 60,000. So if you're like me and you still love to play and you're very active, but you do unfortunately get a little banged up, Rothman Orthopedics specialize in orthopedics, and you visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. We move from the room there where you have to get checked out to make sure you're good to another room, a private room where, fellas, you don't want your grooming routine to be a one and done deal. Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face, which is nasty, and your private parts are over thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed from 12 to 6, introducing the Beard and Balls bundle featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger, a trimmer for the moneymaker and another for the boys downstairs. And you can get 20% off plus free shipping with code PHLY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped. We've talked plenty about our friend, the Lawnmower 5.0. Just to tell you briefly about the Beard Hedger, whether you're going for a neat, subtle, or a full-on lumberjack look, this trimmer has you covered, featured in titanium, coated stainless steel, T-blade, and 20 length options. You can achieve any style you want with just a twist of the Zoom wheel. So get in there, check both out, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com. Now, no more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming whenever you need it. Now it's time for the bell. It's a significant bell.
No, not really. It's Mo Wagner returning to the Orlando Magic on a 2-year, $22 million deal per Woj.
2-year, 20. Okay, he opted out. I think it was $8 million with Orlando. So okay, got a little nice little bump.
Yeah. So their cap space that allegedly they're in the mix for Paul George was used on Wagner, KCP, Gary Harris. Not the sexiest summer down there in Orlando, I would say that. So we've talked about some minimum guys. Well, we've talked about both sides of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. The biggest name, maybe not the biggest name because LeBron technically isn't signed yet. And I think that's actually connected to this guy I'm about to talk about. DeMar DeRozan is probably the most interesting guy remaining on the market at this point. And my suspicion from talking to people is that he's going to end up getting so much money that it will be impossible for the Sixers to get him. And I don't love the fit. But if you're just talking about a pure talent bet, and there's some rumors out there that DeRozan might take a 1-year deal with the hope of getting back into free agency next offseason. If you could somehow convince him to be like your super sub sixth man type and to take a below market deal, at that point, I would be in on DeMar despite my reservations about him as a player because we're talking about backup point guard. if you have him, you don't need a true backup point guard. That would be the guy you run a lot of offense through.
I would agree.
Have him as your on-ball creator. You tap into McCain's spot-up shooting. You tap into Tyrese Maxey's ability to relocate and shoot off a movement and do things like that. And DeMar, while he has not historically been a good playoff player, has also had to be like the guy on most of the teams he's been in the playoffs with. And if he can just be one of those depth pieces rather than, hey, I'm the featured player, the offense has to run through me, then I have some interest in him. Now, how many minutes would you realistically be able to play with him alongside like a Joel Embiid because of the overlap in where they want to operate on the floor? Maybe not a ton, but I like the ability to get his own shot. I like the ability to get to the free throw line. I like the playmaking, which has gone way up since he joined San Antonio onward, became a much more reliable and consistent playmaker. Also is notoriously like a pretty good locker room guy, like good dude. You never really hear people say bad things about DeMar. So if he gets to, the end of this week or we're into next week and he hasn't figured out where his next spot is and he's more in like ring chase and then I'm going to try to get my next payday next summer mode, that's the guy that I would say screw the fit and just, bet on the talent and bring in the shot creation.
Neither of you have to convince me on him because even when we were just talking before any of this Paul George stuff came to fruition, that we were talking about DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and you guys know where I was on DeRozan, even as a tougher fit with more money on a long-term deal. So I'm with that. If you can somehow find a way to convince him to stay away from the Clippers or the Lakers or Chicago for that matter and come here to Philadelphia, the fit is and always has been a part of the conversation, a tough look. But if you're getting him on hey, I'm just coming in here to do some things.
It would be at that like $8-9 million.
Yeah.
You'd have to use all of that.
I love
and even that is probably low. Not probably. That is low for him based on his skill set and production.
That would be him. I'm taking that instead of a mid-level because I want to chase a championship.
Yeah. I love that. Now, when you talk about the Embiid fit in the non-Embiid lineups, if he's out there with Tyrese Maxey, that's normally his role. How would that look if it's just those two?
No, you'd probably end up running a lot of it through DeMar just because Tyrese is so much better of an off-ball player. My question is, if you're DeMar, and there's a lot of talk about maybe he's just going to take a 1-year deal so he can hit free agency next year when more teams have cap space and he has better chances. Well, if you're going to do that, you're either going to go back to Chicago so you can keep your bird rights, or I think he would go to the West Coast because he's just a West Coast guy. I think he'd
go to the Lakers.
So I don't really think this is all that. I don't like. If he ends up on a low contract like that, A, I think maybe it would be more like mid-level. But B, I think it's probably more just like 1 year, I'm going to try to hit free agency, in which case I don't think the Sixers are going to win that. But going back to your point, you would run most of your offense through DeMar because Tyrese is also an incredible off-ball player, one of the best off-ball shooters on the planet. You would have to run it that way.
And you can put a lot of shooting around him on that, like just with what you have already. If you have now, there'll be a lot of defensive concerns here, but if you have DeMar with Maxey and McCain and Gordon and a bunch, like just a couple of those guys, you put a couple shooters next to him, you give him someone in Andre Drummond that he already has built-in chemistry with because those guys played together, so knows how to get him the ball at his spots. Drummond can be an effective roller playing off of him, so there's already some built-in synergy there as well. I agree. I would say this is a low, like less than 5% chance. I don't think the Sixers are moving forward as if, hey, we're really in the DeMar DeRozan race, but he is a guy that he is a big enough name and has a diverse enough skill set offensively that you have to at least consider the possibility. And I think, frankly, like this is the sort of thing that Daryl Morey will say, yeah, he's not a perfect fit, but the talent is so much greater than, like you're talking about wings where we're getting to like Yuta Watanabe and some of these other guys. And it's like, these guys are okay. Or Taurean Prince. Like, these guys are fine as role players, right? But they can't. DeMar DeRozan could go and win you a game.
The
like,
Haywood
just go out
Highsmith
there.
slander is just unreal.
Well, we're going to get to him at some point. That's why I didn't throw him into that group of guys. But the point is, DeMar is really good. And if for whatever reason He's in true ring chasing mode, true like 1 year deal, whatever. I'll reset my market and get back out there next offseason. I think that's something that they should take advantage of or should try to take advantage of at the least.
All right. So since you brought up, bringing up, we're already at like the 44-minute mark. We might as well bring in the Haywood Highsmith, former Delaware Blue Coat great, and play some games with the Sixers. I got to be honest, I didn't know it was going to turn into this with him in Miami, playing the way that he has, and now going to this open market where we're talking about him in this way, where coming in maybe on a 2-year deal on an okay number. He has shown to be a worthy defender, Derek. He's shown himself to be a pretty good three-point shooter as well. When you leave him open, you're like, that's probably going to go down if you're the opposition in the Sixers case. But in a lower contract, maybe a 2-year deal, 1+1 on a decent number, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Who is that again?
My! All right, am I gonna have to talk again?
Right,
Derek is really floating over here.
Yeah, no, look, he is. He is the shot has been. What's he been shooting lately? Like mid-30s, somewhere in that range.
I'll check. You talk. I'll check.
Bigger wing. Look, is he going to get anyone truly excited? No, but I think to Kyle's point, which he was making before I brought in Highsmith, none of the
39.6% last season
better than I thought.
in 66 games.
Only playing like 20 minutes per, so it's not like it's been on a super high volume. But I think even when he was here, which feels like 110 years ago, and he played like 5 games or whatever.
2018-19.
He was the shot. I think I eventually believed in.
That was the bet was on the shot with him.
Just could everything else catch up? You're not going to ask him to put the ball on the floor a lot. You're not going to ask him to like run through a lot of screens. But like in terms of being big enough and athletic enough to compete defensively and make an open shot, I think it's a reason. Honestly, he's pretty. I'm not going to say he's top of the list, but he's a honest, viable candidate for a portion of the $9 million or so that they have remaining. I think it's fair.
I think so. This is
with the
part of why I think DeRozan
wingspan
is going
also
to get much more money is because I would put Highsmith in the category of wings that is in that $7 to $10 million range this summer. The Najee Marshalls, the Oubres, like good shooter, reliable defender. And that archetype is getting the taxpayer MLE or somewhere in that range this summer. So would I prioritize a wing that can shot create over him? Probably. But you're not getting that guy for $8 million. And so Haywood, it'd be funny at the full circle moment for him to come back here after they let him go and he discovered himself in
Sixers
Miami.
fans love full circle moments, which we'll get to in a minute.
Well, and by the way, it took him, I believe he went overseas for at least a year before getting to Miami.
He was
overseas before coming here too, I think.
Yeah, so this has been quite a journey for him.
He went to Germany.
Yes. So, yeah, I think if they end up just cutting Paul Reed and trying to use that $9-ish million of cap space, I think he's a good candidate. I think that's a fair number for him. It's really, to me, the question is he going to leave Miami in the first place? Because a lot of times when these guys who have had the long road break through somewhere and find a role, find a niche, they can be a little bit reluctant to go out and like, well, I have it good here. I have Eric Spoelstra, who has clearly found a home for me in this rotation, is a really good coach. Do I want to leave just based on, the pure financial aspect of it? It'll be interesting.
There is always a nagging fear in the back of my head of whenever role players leave Miami, they are never as good. It comes up a little bit with
the voodoo
Martin
magic
as well.
down there.
We got bit by that with Josh Richardson a couple years ago.
Someone mentioned that earlier. Stay away from all Heat people because it never works out when they come to Philadelphia.
Unless Spo is coming with them, it's tough to always replicate that.
So a couple of people also in the chat brought up one of the names that we discussed a little bit earlier before the show. So people talk about Dario Saric. Well, we did talk about Dario Saric before the show. We just didn't get to it yet. So we will now. Dario Saric, a free agent. It seems like it's been a while since he's last been here. 2018-19 season before he was traded to Minnesota. It's part of that Jimmy Butler deal. But he does not look the same. His last really good season was with the Phoenix Suns, and then he got hurt during the championship run.
Yeah,
that hurt the Suns at the time. And since then, he has not been the same type of player because of the versatility at the center and the power forward position. But the way people were talking is that they just want a reunion right now with Dario Saric. with the Philadelphia 76ers.
That was what? That was an ACL?
That was an ACL.
Yeah,
Yep.
he just has not been completely the same physically since then. And I think the league has just trended in a way where he is pretty much exclusively a backup center at this point and a non-rim protecting backup center at that point. The shot is there, and crucially, the top of the key shot. So, like, if you're trying to
he loves the above the break.
A little pick and pop game, he can do that. And he still has a little bit of creativity if he has a closeout to attack. Look, a backup
his passing is still really good.
A backup center isn't sure. No, and I like watching him play. He's a good dude. Like, I'm not against a reunion. It just has to make sense on the basketball court as well. It's just a backup center is pretty low on the priority list, especially after they gave $5 million to Drummond. I don't want him necessarily playing at the 4, so I'm not sure he necessarily fits what we're looking for in this stage. And I still think he's probably going to command more than like a minimum, so it would be tough for me to give him that contract. But the fan in me, yeah, I like watching Dario. Just the analyst in me is like, eh.
I like Dario, the guy, a lot too. Like he's a big time competitor, but 2, he's just a funny guy in the locker room, which I was not expecting when he first came here. The shooting being where it's at now, he's a pretty consistent, upper 30s type guy.
And
at
on
this
pretty
point.
good volume for his minutes.
It is nice, but I don't think he can play power forward anymore. Yep. And I think they have enough resources invested in the center position at this point. So I hope Dario succeeds elsewhere. I don't think that this is the right place for him at this point.
When I call him a center, it's not because I think he's going to do centery things. It's because I don't think he can move well.
He can't guard forwards.
It's not like he has a versatility of this is a versatility play where, oh man, he's such a big imposing figure, you can play him at the 4 or 5. No, I think he just doesn't move well enough to defend the 4, so you have to stick him at the 5, but you want more rim protection, so it's not ideal in either spot. But offensively, I think he would help. I do. Like the shooting, the ball movement, I think all that would help. It's not a high priority.
It's not a high priority. We'd be talking about other things than basketball with Dario Saric because I don't know how much he would be playing. You said he's a good guy in the locker room.
Good vibes, all that. But
one time I interviewed him, me and Brian Seltzer. You guys remember with the Sixers at the time? We did our show with him. He had a slick-ass leather jacket on. And I'm like, where did you get that from? He's like, yeah, I got it from back home. I was like, that's the softest leather jacket I ever saw in my life. I don't know what's going on. Bring me one of those back from Croatia. Let's get to some super chats here as we have a ton of those coming in here. Let's start with Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. He says, Tyrese, Jabari Smith, Bobby Portis, re-signed KJ Martin, as you talked about. Tyrese, we've talked about a lot. We've never discussed Jabari Smith because we felt like he's still in their plans in Houston. And Bobby Portis, we discussed a tad bit. But Tyrese, because of the logjam that they might have there, Kyle, we talked about him a lot.
And he fits the dirty work,
the athleticism, rebounding,
athlete,
get out in the break.
Plug him right in, and you're good.
Now, so here's the problem as it relates to any of the Houston guys. Unless that trade is then immediately turning into it's a multi-team deal where Houston is acquiring a star, I don't think they're in pick accumulation mode, right? They want guys who can help them now. And Tari Eason is a useful player. I don't think they want to just give him away for picks based on everything we heard that is out there about them. That might be one, if you get closer to the deadline and Houston is like, hey, Phoenix is falling apart. We know that there's a little bit of Kevin Durant smoke out there with them already. How real that is, I don't know.
Right.
But let's just say Phoenix starts falling apart. Kevin Durant goes on the market. And Houston's like, all right, we need a little bit more draft capital, or we'd like to. We got to free up some space here. Maybe then you say, hey, we'd like Tari Eason. He fits a need. And that might be more of a, let's say, January, February type of move that makes more sense. I don't see urgency from Houston right now to move any of these guys. And like Jabari Smith, very high draft pick. I don't think they want to sell low on him necessarily. He's not been, I think, what they've hoped for. And part of that is that the team increasingly is like, Şengün is the featured guy. And, how does everybody fit in that ecosystem? The really interesting thing there, Şengün has been their best player, but they don't seem like they're fully committed to him as like the future of the franchise. And so I don't think he works here for 100 different reasons, but I'd be keeping an eye on him and maybe where he goes, or if they look to move him, and how the chairs get rearranged in Houston.
Saw a report about he and Jalen Green both not getting that extension and what that might mean for their futures in Houston.
Yeah, I think they're still figuring out what they have in all of them.
Yep.
Like half the scouting department are old NBA draft Twitter guys.
Yeah,
so that's it's basically all the guys that I used to read their work. It's like, yep, I kind of know who you like in terms of the profile of player they go after.
Let's hit the next super chat. Devon will stick with him. Believe it or not, looking at the numbers,
Devon's guy.
My guy, Isaiah Stewart. Beef stew. Well, look, the rebounding and the physicality, all that good stuff. He can switch a little bit, but
and he can shoot.
But he's on an extension, isn't he?
He has a lot of years left, so I believe he's got 3 at 15 a year, and then a club option for it's 15 flat for 4 consecutive seasons. One of those being the club option in 27-28. So again, as Derek was saying with Dorian Finney-Smith, that is the very, very top of the. So you are essentially ruling out all other moves the rest of the season to go in on beef stew, and that's why I'd be a thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to hard cap myself.
When we were talking about the guys just in a different role in the spot, and maybe it would just help them to get out of their current situation, I brought him up because he's a good player in a bad spot. And that's the reason why. But it would be a tough, especially going up, if you have the opportunity to maybe get better players at the deadline, then I would say no to Isaiah Stewart. As much as I like him, I would still. Thanks, Devon. We appreciate it. Brian Pumper. Forget a dude named Finney.
It's the beef stew chat
perfect
today.
4 next to Hans. Well, we just explained it. We just talked about it, B-Pump. We appreciate it. Thank you. Lauren Michaels. Once the season gets underway again, man, we're available. We are available. We're good enough. We can host SNL. Telling you, Lauren. What are 1 through 5? I know, but Colin Jost is confused. Well,
we're talking about the starting lineup right now.
Power forward, shooting
they don't
guard,
have
small
a starting
forward,
lineup.
No,
forward,
they have 4.
And center.
Not a 4.
That's
they
1
have
through
4.
5.
Yeah.
They have 4 guys who can start.
And we would prefer the technical 2, to be coming off the bench as the 6. So right now they have 4 starters.
I'm much more okay with Kelly starting on this year's version of the team than I was with Tobias.
I agree.
If they get an upgrade, I would still be more than okay with him coming off the bench.
And some people will point out, like,
regardless.
Eric Gordon started. He's actually started more games over the last couple of years than I expected.
No,
I don't think so. I think he's a 6 man.
No. Yeah, but
not even. I think he's a bench player.
I was just saying. I hope at this point he's not the 6th man. I hope he's more like 8th man in the rotation.
Right now that would be McCain, wouldn't it? Technically.
Oh, I don't. I think if you're expecting McCain to be ahead of Eric Gordon,
I'm just simply looking at what they have available.
Another thing coming on that front. Looking at Nick Nurse.
I don't think it's Rick. Yeah, as much as we love Rick, I don't think it's Rick.
Well, look, Ricky. I keep saying it. The further we get, the closer we get to the season. Every day that goes by, the more I'm like, Ricky's got a real chance.
Oh,
man.
He does.
Got a real
he
chance.
Does.
Oh, Devon, pissed off Phil, man. You cannot bring up Kelly coming off the bench. Come on, bro.
I'm not paying Phil any more attention today. We've been going back and forth already. I told him
Phil, I'm with you finally. He's a starter clearly. It's the 5th guy.
I said he's a starter, but if you can upgrade over him, I would, because I think he's valuable coming in off the bench and just say, go ahead, get it.
Phil needs that percentage on that next contract, man. You got to have him play well, opt out, get that 480. Phil needs that in his life.
We need to create
You didn't get paid enough, Phil?
A chat anger scale from like 1 to 10 painted fingernails. That's our new scale of anger.
If you would have got him the contract that you thought you were getting him, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
It's not our fault you failed, Phil.
Yes, 4 for 80. You didn't get your job done. Just cut it out, Phil.
You still got your 5%, but you could have gotten a lot more.
Cut it out. I told him he needs to come in because these arguments on here are not enough. We can't say enough. Chris,
we should do that through August, man. Just like pick up like 2 people a week to come in and we can debate them.
We should do that. That'd be fun.
Got a lot of shows to get
That will be fun. Another question here from Chris. Yes. Chris has 2. I don't know if these are combined, but I'll just run them this way. Maxey, PG, Dorian Finney-Smith, Miles Bridges, Embiid. Could that work? That's number 1.
Fuck Miles Bridges.
On a minimum.
Yeah, well, the only way that exact configuration works is Miles Bridges taking the minimum, and I'm not even sure based on how many years of experience he has.
I wonder if he's the one that's going to have to suffer and wait until a lot of this is over.
Good.
With.
Yeah. Oh man, my heart's broken.
I'm talking basketball because he's the trail of what all of that we don't want him here for. I just wonder if that's the case for him.
Yeah.
That he's going to have to wait and he's going to be surprised by what he's offered or not offered on the market. Chris continues. Trade for John Collins. That was one that Kyle talked about a couple of weeks ago.
He's too much money, right?
Maxey, I'm pretty sure he's too much money.
Dorian Finney-Smith, Paul George, Collins with Embiid.
26.
So you put him at your 4th spot with Dorian Finney-Smith. How you going to trade for all of that?
You're not. The answer is you're not.
And John Collins, you can't do that.
You want to trade Tyrese Maxey? Then you can get John Collins.
That's true. It is technically possible.
It ain't happening. If the math ain't mathing.
Well, how much does he make?
26.
All right.
Yeah,
well, he's out. He's out.
So, and again, trading, and not only so trading for Dorian Finney-Smith is that Paul Reed thing we're talking about. That will hard cap you anyway. So there's 2 reasons it won't work. One, you don't have any contracts left to trade. The other, you have a hard cap that you have to deal with. Wouldn't happen.
All right, Shahid checking in. For a second, I thought Devon was going to say that Paul Reed was a healthy man that could benefit from some Manscaped. No, I was just simply talking about Rothman Orthopedics, our sponsor here on the show, not Manscaped at that time. We did get to Manscaped a little bit later.
And by the way, I hope none of the Sixers players need Rothman.
No.
But that's probably a little bit unrealistic.
One of their doctors, they partner with them. They partner with Rothman.
I'm just saying, I hope they don't need them because no injuries.
The Eagles partner with Rothman. Sixers partner with Rothman. Hey, it's all good. But thank you, Shahid. We appreciate that. Trip City. All right, let's see here. 9+ mil cap space, but up to 14 if Reed is traded, plus the MLE. He's asking you, Derek, is that the number 9 right now? No,
that 9 is...
that assumes Paul gets...
Oh, yeah. So it's $9 million if you cut... $9 to $10 million if you cut Paul Reed, up to like $15 million if you trade Paul Reed. The mid-level is used on Kelly.
Kelly got the room mid-level.
Right.
So that's already eliminated. Right. So those are the 2 options in front of them.
And again, I think the way to maximize the amount of money you can spend is to waive Paul Reed, use that $9 million, keep KJ Martin's $2 million cap hold, then give him the big money and trade him at the deadline. That is the way you get the most money available on this roster without hard capping yourself.
Rand saying,
calculated.
We need that stamp. We need that stamp. Bree, is that possible? We can get the stamp. All right. Rand Sand says Reed plus McCain. Could you package those 2 for Lowry marketing?
Which is funny because most of the stuff isn't really about like calculations. It's just about knowing the rules, which is the hard part of this. Not really. Anyway,
don't take away from the bit.
So right now, McCain doesn't cost anything in an outbound salary in a trade. He's 0 because he's still unsigned. If you sign him, you have to wait 2 months. Not a big deal. We got a long time until basketball starts. It's happened,
and you can agree to stuff in principle.
And it's happened before. It's happened Andrew Wiggins. So that will work under the rules. That would be like $11.5 million in outgoing salary. That's enough to absorb a $14.9 billion salary. The problem is because you are receiving more back in a trade than you send out, you are still hard capped. The fundamental problem of being hard capped. Now you would have $4 million in flexibility under that hard cap, and because of that, you can go out there and sign veteran minimum contracts instead of like rookie minimum contracts. So it's more manageable if you zero out McCain's contract. But I still think that would probably, if my top of head and this actual calculator calculations, I think that would leave you about $2 million shy of the hard cap after filling out the roster. It's very little wiggle room, but theoretically it is possible.
And it gets even worse long term, obviously, with the future deal that Markkanen would command.
Wait, what Markkanen is at 16? So it might be like a million. It might be less than. It might be $1 million.
I thought it doesn't.
Is it 17? 16,
I thought
17?
It was like 18.
I thought it was 18.
Oh.
Yes. He's at 18, $44,544.
All right. So you might have to go back to rookie minimum contracts. Anyway, it is, I think, theoretically possible. I'd have to double check. I think it's theoretically possible, but completely implausible.
I'm going to give everyone a gentle.
It's not happening.
It's not going to happen. It's. I get why his name is still an intriguing target. I would be absolutely stunned if it happened.
Yeah. It would be tough to avoid the hard cap this year, but it would be the bigger concern, like Kyle mentioned, is when he gets that next contract. It's not
quite a few people in the chat saying, man, like Phil W. I'll give you this one, Phil. Man, I like Paul Reed. Others saying, why do we keep talking about having to trade Paul Reed? Some like Paul Reed, some don't. But in order to get a player like that, if they were able to do it, Paul Reed's 7.7 is a big pathway of probably getting that player done. That's why. I
mean, we're looking at it. You have 4 starters. NBA rules dictate you start 5. Your best way to get that is either waiving Paul Reed, using him as a trade. One of those two. It's not by keeping Paul Reed as a third string center. It's just not.
And we've talked about Paul quite a bit. I said the other day that I thought last season was a tough one for him, not all because of his own faults. I think Nick Nurse tried to use him in ways that are not conducive to his skill set. And I think getting Paul George, and if you can between Paul George, Oubre, you get another switchable wing, well, then you can play more of a switching defense when Joel Embiid is off the floor. That's something that I would be intrigued by, because Paul Reed, for his faults as a drop defender, which we saw most of last year, he can step out and switch on guys and has proven that is a way for him to provide value to a team. He's been useful in like real deal playoff games. Don't forget that in that game 1 that Joel missed against Boston last year, Paul Reed not only held up his end of the bargain defensively, he hit clutch free throws down the stretch. Like Paul Reed might not be the perfect backup player, and there are matchups where he will get played off the floor. But the whole reason they wanted to get Andre Drummond at the deadline is so that they had those alternative options, so that when Paul Reed is not good, you put Drummond in. And when Drummond is mismatched, you can use Paul Reed.
And there will be times where Drummond is mismatched.
Yeah, so having a Paul Reed type, who I think we're probably putting a Dembona in that category, is important for this roster. I just think they'll end up going with the younger and much cheaper for right now guy over Reed.
And the much cheaper is a huge part of this. Like Bona is going to make $1.2 million or whatever it is, and that's the exact same as a minimum salary cap hold anyway. So there's legitimately no drawback to having him on the roster. Whereas Paul Reed, he is getting in the way of your final big move. It's just the reality of it is. And I still think if this was just the Sixers being over the cap and not having to worry about this, he might be back, because there is pretty good scheme diversity with him and Drummond. It's just he's getting in the way of your last move. That's really what it comes down to.
Joe on Twitter, Fiorillo, says, can you just explain what the difference is between the room exception and the mid-level exception? Room
exception is a maximum of 2 years and a starting salary of $8 million. The full mid-level is a starting salary of $12.9 million, a maximum of 4 years.
Super
so
chat.
You get in order to have cap space, you have to renounce the full mid-level. That is something you get in place of it after going over the cap.
Super chat. Jason Beach says, a name that we've talked about a little bit, Lonnie Walker. Thoughts on signing Lonnie Walker, the Reading native?
A minimum, absolutely.
Yeah, on a minimum, that's
easy.
Shot
easy
creation, scoring off the bench, and scoring that comes in the form of he can attack guys off the dribble. He's more of a streaky shooter than a consistent shooter. But anybody who's got a live dribble that can potentially get to the basket and beat guys one-on-one, I have a lot of interest in those types of guys, because they have decent guards as it stands, but most of their guards, the guards other than Maxey, are not blow-by guys. They're McCain, I'm worried about the handle. Eric Gordon is old, quite frankly. So yeah, I would 100% be in.
As
on
someone
a little
who
bit
is older than Eric Gordon, I take offense to that.
I mean,
I also am not playing NBA basketball.
I'm in the same general age bracket, so it's old relative to the sport.
The thing with Lonnie is, he's only like a 6'4" guard, but he has a pretty massive wingspan. He's like a 6'10", 6'11" wingspan. Another guy who can defend up, I think, probably a little better than some guys of his size. Like, at a small contract. Going back to Devon's point, if you're looking for like another creator, and he's not a creator in like the passing variety, but like he has a live dribble, he can get to his spots. I would have interest in that, sure.
And to make Phil happy, if Lonnie Walker is on this team, then Kelly Oubre is starting. There you go.
And also, as a Lehigh Valley guy, I count Reading in the
100%.
Philadelphia area.
Yes.
So that's a homecoming.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think of Lonnie?
Well,
Brooklyn
let's go back to the Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn we got to tap into.
You get the Brooklyn stamp because there were many times where he came in the game and he saved them. You know, a lot of times where he and Kale would be the only ones getting work done. Then Claxton, of course, doing what he does. Spencer Dinwiddie decided not to shoot the basketball because he just simply wanted to get out. I would look at Lonnie Walker and be happy with that because of what he did with the Brooklyn Nets. He is a scorer. He is not a shooter, but he can shoot much, much better now. He is streaky, as Kyle said, but that guy can flat out score the basketball. That would be a nice addition to your bench. That will be your scoring six man coming off the bench, no 100%. Question. And now he does have the wingspan, but you would have to go back to back and see what about the height because I know that's the thing.
I think he's a bit taller than I am.
All right,
so
just check.
I'll give him
he's
that
definitely.
I think he's like a true 6'4".
He was like 6'4" and shoot because without shoes.
When I was around him, I'm like, man, he doesn't seem as tall as I thought he was. But the guy can
we'll
play.
Go back to back. We'll line up on the wall. We'll do the pencil marks. We can do the whole thing.
And also, great locker room guy, good guy. Lonnie Walker. Final one, Brian Pumper again, Joel at the 4 and Drummond at the 5. Relieve Joel of the rebounding responsibilities.
No.
And he can do all the shot jacking he wants, Karl Anthony Towns style.
Now, if I remember, when he was here last time, they played one possession together, and they had like a plus 200
They have
net
the greatest
rating.
net rating in the history of basketball because there was a intentional missed free throw tip-in situation.
Extrapolate that out, Kyle. They're the best team in NBA history. Stats don't lie.
So the problem with that, other than Drummond's limited offensive utility.
Other than the fact that it's 2024 and we don't play like that anymore?
I don't want Joel running in space defending wings so that Andre Drummond can protect. Joel's value is at the rim. Anything that takes him away from the rim, you want him to be able to switch and hedge and do these things, but you ultimately want to get him back toward the basket.
Yeah.
That's where he's best.
Not to mention the offensive spacing concerns and the fact that Drummond doesn't really protect the rim either. Like, no, I don't. No two twin towers, especially on a non-shooter. All
right. I got a lot of names on Twitter,
got another super chat, buddy.
Well, by the way, the guy who was our image for the show has not been brought up one time today. Buddy Hield.
I guess no one cares.
Well, we have to care. We did make it we have a super chat from Jay the Jungle in here before we get to that. If you had to guess who ends up starting for backup point guard, not on the roster. I kind of think Lowry will be back. I don't.
You're talking Kyle Lowry, not Markkanen.
No, Kyle Lowry
as the backup point guard.
Just making sure.
I think he eventually comes back as the backup point guard. Nick Nurse uses him slightly too much. That'll be a story for another day. I will bitch about it all season, but that's kind of where I lean. Starting 4 is tough because
we used to always say we always had to preface everything with Tobias of really nice guy. With Kyle, it's like, I like Kyle, but Nick, what are you doing?
38. I don't know. I mean, we don't know. If we had to guess, maybe it was Dorian Finney-Smith that they pulled the trigger on that. Maybe. I don't know.
Monte Morris plans to sign a deal with the Phoenix Suns.
Well, it takes away another spot from Kyle Lowry. He's been mentioned with Monte Morris as a candidate to be a backup there in Phoenix. So if Monte Morris goes there, that means another spot where Kyle Lowry may not be going, and that includes the Los Angeles Clippers by agreeing to a deal with Chris Dunn.
You want to know how I know that that's a minimum contract without actually knowing? Shams' tweet just said signed a deal and then listed the stats.
Yep.
That for anybody out there, if you ever see an NBA newsbreaker tweet that and there's no terms, that means they're on a minimum contract. Just think about it for a few seconds and see if you can figure out why.
Didn't do enough in Minnesota to warrant anything more. So
no.
That sounds about right. Stacey did ask, though. She asked, can we do a minute again since she missed it yesterday on Markelle Fultz of a possibility of signing him?
Yeah. Look, so the big question, as it was when he was here and when he left, is where will he shoot the ball from? Right? He is still a reluctant shooter from anywhere beyond the mid-range. He has figured out a way to be effective playing that way at this point. And despite some injuries, still has good athletic tools. He's got good big wingspan, so he can defend a couple different positions. He's shown the calling card has been his defense more than anything. And he has been a good either starting or second unit playmaker when he's been on the floor. Still capable of those, the wrap passes with his length. He can hit stuff over the top.
I used to love Brett when he got him. He's like, ask him to put his arms out like this. Look how long they are. He was in love with him defensively.
So
too.
as a pure table setter playmaker, he obviously has some stuff to him. And I think if you're looking at a backup unit where he's going to work with, whether it's Joel or whether it's Andre Drummond, he's very good at those little interior passes, right? Like getting to the paint and doing the drop off or the threading the pass through traffic to the big man. Unfortunately, him and Drummond would be a spacing disaster. Like that would be a big problem. And so you'd have some things to work out there.
We've seen it before though. Issues like that. So yeah.
I still just think he's getting a real contract still.
I think he'll get some decent money is the big problem with him. Not so much the skill set.
Yep. Absolutely. LL, man, LL recording music and knowing NCIS. Now he's watching the PHLY 60 show.
Is hot as hell.
And LL is asking, is there anyone worried about Joel playing in the Olympics? He needs to chill. Don't need him getting hurt. For me, anytime you have an opportunity to play in the Olympics, especially now at his age and with his injuries, I never get mad at a guy for taking advantage of an opportunity to be a part of their team, their country, and representing their country. And he went through thinking about Cameroon to getting the citizenship in France, and now also doing the same thing in the United States. I'm perfectly fine with him playing. He's not going to play all 40. What is it? How many minutes is it? 40 minutes? Is it?
I think you're right.
Yeah, something like that. He's not going to play every minute of every game.
I mean, we are covering Team USA literally next week.
We can look it up. But he's not going to play every minute.
We will be in Las Vegas in a week covering Team USA, by the way. I don't know if we've actually made a big deal out of that, but we will be there.
So
I'll look up the rules before then. It's a fair point.
I personally have no problem with him playing for Team USA. He's surrounded by a group of players that there's a ton of talent on that team where he doesn't have to overtax himself. So I'm still fine with Joel playing in the Olympics and representing Team USA. And he's talked about how much it means now that he's a citizen because of his son, him being born here, and how much it means to him as a father to want to do that. So I have no problem with it.
Yeah, look, what I would say is, am I worried? Yeah, but again, to go back, I worry about almost literally everything. But I also want two things. First of all, I want Joel to be happy, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And second of all, I still want Joel Embiid playing basketball over the summer. And it's not like someone pointed out in chat, there's AD and Bam Adebayo there. It's not like he's going to be playing the entire time.
I really want to see some Joel AD lineups, by the way.
Would playing 20 to 25 in the Olympics be riskier than doing workouts with Drew Hanlon? Yeah, but it's not like it's a 0% risk with workouts. It's not like it's a huge risk playing the Olympics. So whatever the increase in risk is, I'm okay with it because, one, it's game action in the middle of August when he wouldn't normally get game action. That can help keep him sharp. It'll help keep him in shape, and it'll be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So I think all of those benefits, I'm not going to say outweigh the risk, but I'm comfortable with the risk for sure. He should play.
I don't know if I want to get into this topic because I might make some people mad about my position on people coming to this country and embracing the... All right, I'm going to make people mad.
You want to wait until we get there?
No, I'm going to say it now because we're on the subject. A lot of people get mad when people immigrate to this country and try to retain their culture and, whether it's language, whether it's food, all that they try to bring things with them, and they should, by the way. That's America's supposed to be a melting pot, right? But when people come here and they speak Spanish, they speak French, whatever it is, people get mad because they're not assimilating in the right way for them. Joel Embiid came here as a teenager and has now gone from a guy just here because he's chasing his dream to someone who is raising his family here, who has become an American citizen, who has embraced everything about being an American. He is supposed, that's the pinnacle of what it's supposed to be to come to this fucking country. And so if that guy wants to go and represent America and be proud to put USA on his chest, that's the exact sort of person who should do so. And I understand all the injury concerns. I understand the people that care about the Sixers first. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he's getting to play in the Olympics. I'm glad he's getting to play with all these high-level players. I hope they go out and win the gold medal because, again, that's the country I am from and was born in. And I'm glad that Joel is happy to represent it and that he has found a home and has raised a family here. I think that's pretty cool.
And with that happiness that both you and Derek talked about, you have to only imagine, should they win that gold medal, this is the first time he's going to experience any type of big winning like that.
Yeah.
He does that.
And then you feel that success
home.
And you say, I want more.
Exactly. Favorite big lineup, since you brought that up. Can I run my big lineup in Olympics?
For the Olympics? Yeah.
LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Bam Adebayo with Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid.
Oh, the triple center.
All of it. We've seen Bam hit shots
with
from
those
the perimeter.
FIBA rules, just slotting everything off.
Can you imagine? You got all of those guys can run the floor. So I'm in. We got more super chats. We got to keep them rolling. Shaheed, as long as he doesn't get a Legionnaires. Wow, Legionnaires disease. Joel should be fine. All right. We'll take that. Absolutely.
I mean, listen, never rule anything out with Joel, I guess. But
as long as he's healthy.
Just the example of, like, I get it. There is, to Derek's point, there's added risk in a game setting versus working out with Drew Hanlon. We're talking about a guy who just got Bell's palsy during the play. It's like
anything could happen.
Literally anything. He could walk outside and get struck by lightning tomorrow.
Let that man
you just can't go through life.
Drew Hanlon could end up
way.
elbowing him in the eye socket. I don't know how, because Drew is about 5'10", but like it could happen.
He wants to compete at the highest level internationally with Team USA. I'm not going to stop him or complain about it.
Gene wants some recruiting, by the way, at the Olympics.
Go get Ant-Man.
There's another one.
Ant-Man, in a few years, come on down to death row. How about that?
Al Max says, Fontecchio, you guys talked about him a little bit before we started the show in Detroit last year. 28-year Euro, 43 from three on 6 attempts. What else do you have? Rebounding, only 1 turnover, three rebounds, averages 15 a game. Restricted free agency there, 5.3.
The restricted free agency is the key part
yes.
because they're not going to let him go.
I think it would have to be a sign and trade. In which case,
this out, sign and trade, and include Paul Reed in that.
Sixers would be hard capped.
Yeah. Okay. Any sign and trade leaves you hard capped. So
I would, and that's receiving a player in a sign and trade. I would have interest. And even with the hard cap, if you keep the number low enough, I would have interest. But I have a feeling at that number, they would just match.
Yeah.
All right. We have one more name, but we'll get to him tomorrow because
the guy who was the cover of the show, maybe.
Yeah. We'll talk about him tomorrow. We'll talk about another former Sixer everybody keeps bringing up that everyone wants to talk about. But we are going to step away today, of course. PHLY Sixers Free Agency Frenzy, presented by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics here on both of Derek and I, our mug and water bottle here. I guess we can't take that to Vegas, can we? I don't know. We
didn't think I was going to turn into goddamn Captain America on the show today, but
that's all right. That's all right. But we appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 2:30. And just to let everybody know, as Kyle brings it up, talking about the Olympics, we will be starting next week. We will be in Las Vegas for both the Olympics and the Summer League. So we'll be busy next week.
We will be in Vegas for like 8 days.
8 days.
And if we live to tell the tale, we'll be back on this set after that. But we will have a bunch of live shows out in Vegas. We will have a lot of diehard content. So obviously, if you have not signed up to be a diehard, go to allphly.com. Look into that program. We already have a bunch of stuff from free agency, both evaluating what's happened, predicting what's to come. Derek's crunching all the numbers for us, so Devon and I don't have to. And then you get good work from the rest of our staff. And importantly, access to the Discord. I slept in a little bit today and woke up to like 300-something messages. I know Derek and I have been super involved trying to keep people in the loop with everything that's happening. So make sure you check that out if
Devon
you have already joined the
we do have a
diehard.
Discord server.
Yeah. Devon's still trying to figure out the whole internet thing.
Yeah.
So, but we will
I'm
be
the
pumping
older
out
one here on the set. So yeah.
Well, this is also why he's the happiest one, though, too.
We'll be pumping out a lot of content from
Yes.
Vegas, but
Me.
we'll also be, interacting with everybody on the road as well, keeping you plugged in. So while we're here, just want to say thank you to all our people here today. Well, some of our people here today. Marty Bones, Marcia
What up,
Lynch,
Bones?
I Gavini, my
Lynch.
girl Winona,
Nona.
Phil W., Kelly Oubre, #1 super fan.
All right.
Fight Chi,
What up,
Spirit
Phil?
42.
What up?
Jess with a purple heart
Hey,
who
Jess.
says, enjoy Vegas. Thank you, Jess. Slade, Mary Overfield.
Slade. Saw you.
Lost
and I'm going
Sleep
to get
TV.
you, sucker. Saw you.
King of the exclamation point, Eugene Ross.
What
Jay
up, Gene?
Peso.
Gene muted
CH who says,
He's at work.
America. That's where we're at today on Joel Embiid. Prophet One, Chef Jones. Spo Babby.
I'll get it together, Jess. I'm sorry.
Jonathan Chen, Marty Bones, William Hunter, Bootzilla,
Boots.
LB Show, Cannoli,
Holy cannoli.
Beethoven.
Oh, what kind of music you producing out there?
Is that related to Zaytoven or Beethoven?
guess
Which
so.
one? Maybe
One
it's
of
an
the two.
homage.
Yeah.
Demetrius Stinson, Shahid, Macmon.
What's up, Shahid?
Who were our super chatters here today, Bree, as I scroll through all
I
these
remember
wonderful names?
Chris and Davon.
Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. SNL Maven. Lauren Michaels. Brian Pumper.
Lauren, we're ready.
Shahid once again.
What up, Pump?
Ransan. Jason Beach. Jay the Jungle. LL. And Al Mack. Thank you guys for the super chats today. Taj W. You better love somebody. Stuart London.
You better love somebody, love somebody, love somebody.
Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Our guy, Mr. Swagoo. I think that's a new one. What's up, Swagoo? Some of these are hard to pronounce, and I'm just going to scroll on by so I don't butcher anybody's names.
You got swag good, right?
Kane, Habib 215.
What up, Habib?
Cal. I think that's probably enough for today. Guys, thank you very, very much for checking in, being with us once again. We've had a great turnout the last week, 2 weeks
You
or
guys
so.
have been killing it. We appreciate it.
Thank you to super producer Bree as well.
Oh, we said no darkness, Fachi said no darkness.
All right. Darkness.
All right, there we go.
Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live.
What
And
up, Ford?
you hit the thumbs up button. Hopefully we'll get some 4th of July fireworks on Wednesday, heading into the holiday.
Fill out this roster. What's
We'll
going
be
on,
back
Daryl?
tomorrow at 2:30.
You need to do something. That was the other day. Do something, Daryl.
We'll see you then.
Thank you, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.